I am here with Q to discuss tonight's Survivor 42 episode, since there was some hot topics. Q, do you want to talk about the episode or just the tribal?
Your pick.
We'll just focus on the tribal. So, we have this dynamic where, first of all, it's split into two different tribes, and Roxroy is voted out first. It's definitely Omar's plan to kind of put this together because he's running the show and not High. But then we get to the second tribal, which comes up with the topic of... It's a topic in all these competition games, especially Big Brother, but of... Sometimes people are targeted for racial reasons, even maybe sometimes it's subconscious, but... How do you feel about the topics tonight?
Yeah, I think that Marianne and Drea hit on some really valid points about subconscious biases and the fact that, is it a coincidence that we're seeing two black people now enter onto the jury? And then also the plan for tonight was to split the votes between Marianne and Drea.
Exactly.
And, if we go back to the first tribal council where it was Roxroy, I feel like on a surface level, it very much was just strategic to get rid of Roxroy because he is an impenetrable force and he's very stubborn, and that is just more a character trait than it is about Roxroy being a black man, right?
Yeah.
But then when you have him join the tribal and you have him join the jury of now two black people, it starts to you start to wonder if there's a little bit of subconscious bias going on.
Yeah, and there was several years in the season 20s where a black player would always get voted out first, or then we've seen trends over the last 15 years if you go back some seasons where maybe they don't go right away, but there is some seasons where the black players go back to back to back to back. So, obviously you can see why Drea and Marianne would see that happening. Yes,
I will say that has turned me off from watching a lot of Survivor seasons, is that literally within the first episode, the black women are immediately isolated. They're just not seen as being as friendly or as part of the in crowd. And then there you go. First tribal council, the black woman's gone or the black man's gone every time. I'm actually floored that black people have made it this far in the game. And I think part of the reason why is because Drea and Roxroy were on a tribe together and kind of had that protection. And I don't really know how Chanel has made it so far. And I think they've just recognized the value that Marianne brings with her idol. So I'm amazed to see as many black people make it as far as they have.
I've said this before on this channel because I like to piss off a certain demographic. That, everybody wants to praise Tony as a winner. And he deserves the praise because he is a great winner. But if you really look at the social dynamics, and it's something what Marianne said tonight, that if you really go back to when there was few black players cast on these shows, the Vesepias, the Jeremys, the Earls, the Wendells, the few black players that have won when there was a few black players, I think they played some great winning games to be able to, get through those dynamics.
Right. Yeah, I think Marianne, her speech was beautiful. And at first, when Marianne started talking, because, she talks unprompted, Jeff doesn't even have to ask her a question. And she's like, I have this thought that I'm going to share. And sometimes you're like, oh, God, what the fuck is Marianne about to say? But she said it so beautifully, which is that it's a smaller game within a larger social stratosphere of life. And we can't pretend like these dynamics that we experience in everyday life, at least within America, that they don't translate into the game, and that you don't have certain privilege, like that you don't come into the game with certain privileges, because you do, or you don't come into the game with certain disadvantages. And so, yeah, I think that when you do look at some of the black players that have won, you really have to, give them applause because they've won in spite of, and they've won against truly the odds of being 1 in 18 and being black. So I thought that was very well stated.
Now, I saw some comments on Twitter, and I even said this during the episode, that Jonathan was getting hella defensive, but
oh yeah,
he was clearly had some subconscious bias, don't you
Child, one thing about white folks, they do not like when you fucking imply that they racist. And it's like, nobody even said Jonathan. Nobody even said racist, really. Racist was never a word. They just said it's looking to be, you know, a racial divide. And then he went and said, I don't know, I feel like you're calling me a racist, and I feel like you're saying subconsciously that I'm racist. Newsflash, Jonathan, if you're listening, you probably are racist. Okay? Let's just go ahead and internalize that. You probably are. And that's something you need to work through. But
Yeah, I think he was like well, we won't get into
a
politics.
hit dog will holler. That's very much what it was.
Yeah. And then we had Tori. Tori was between a Roxroy and a hard place in this fucking episode, because after that whole real life speech, what more could she really do other than play her shot in the dark?
Yeah, I think Tori handled this as best she could. I think she said what she could have socially said without getting ate up all on Black Twitter. But yeah, it sucks to be Tori in this scenario, because if she had tried to deter the conversation and bring it back to the game, she would have gotten lit up. So she was, and it was so obvious that it was gonna be her.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'm very glad that it ended up just being an announcement of who was going to vote, because it's like, why are we even going to go through the formality? Drea already said she's going to play her idol. Marianne now feels like she has to play her idol. And then the real tea, did you peep when Jonathan was like, oh, okay, but they're going to play their idols, right? He was like, yeah, this race talk is cute, but we still got to flesh their idols. So, you know, right?
Jonathan has shit for brains. He has no social awareness or strategy, and I hope people don't rank them high in tomorrow's rankings. But
one thing I will say that kind of, I don't want to say put a bad taste in my... I mean, overall, I get Marianne and Drea's sentiment. I agree with their sentiment. I think what they did was courageous, and I think that they sent the message that they aimed to send. But I do find it interesting, especially with Drea, because if you look back at the beginning of the game, Roxroy was one of her initial targets. She was implicit in the Chanel vote. So I do find it interesting when we want to decide when race becomes a factor, and like
But
when we want to decide when representation matters, because it's like, you know, if you're, you know, like how Issa Rae said it, if I'm rooting for everybody black, then like, you know, you were coming for your boy Roxroy from day one. So, you know, like what's the line between representation and too many black people getting voted out versus truly just playing a game that's strategic?
But I think that goes to the whole point, and this has always been my point when I say these shows need more diversity, is that the black players should be able to play with whoever they want to play, and not have to eventually be this target because, oh my god, the black players might be working together, or oh my god, the black players are close, because that happens a lot. Like even on Big Brother Canada this season, which is why I'm not watching anymore, you're not watching, so I mean, we can't talk about it that much.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was this whole cookout on Big Brother US last season, which was the Black Alliance. All the black players got to the final six. So, but now, even though for years the white players have targeted black players for whatever reason, we all know why, but now they could use that as an excuse that, oh my god, maybe the black players are working together, and that's kind of what they were doing on Big Brother Canada. So, I mean, like, what else can Drea really do?
Right. And maybe that goes to what Marianne was saying of, like, white people literally just having the privilege to play the game that they want to play.
Exactly.
Whereas black people have to literally consider the dynamics of... It's complex. And, like, I'm going to be honest, initially when Drea started talking, I'm like, come on, man. Like, you literally were implicit in Chanel's undoing. You wanted to target Roxroy. I think I'm also just annoyed with Drea, like, as a player. Yeah. So I think that's just kind of where it's coming from. But... I agree. Yeah, I guess it just speaks to the fact that we don't even truly get to play the game the way that we want to, because we have to think about representation.
But it's not even representation. You just eventually have to have this defense mechanism that what if there's all this bias against us and we're just going to be targeted because we're not in the big white alliance. And Drea kind of said that at Tribal. She was like, I see now that I might have to change my game and play harder or something to that effect.
Well, I feel like Drea is in the Big White Alliance. You don't think so? She's in that 19-person alliance with...
But is that even real? I mean, we know how both of us feel about big alliances in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Any other thoughts on tonight's episode or the subject overall?
I think you said it very nicely. I think that this just speaks to the fact that there needs to be more diversity overall. And I will say, like, I don't remember the last season we watched together, but I haven't been keeping up with their Survivor seasons, and I didn't watch season 41, but this season was very diverse. Like, it is very diverse. They have, 4 black people, they have a Muslim man, they have 3 people who identify as being gay, but it's just like, this is definitely a very diverse season, but even then, those nuances still find their way into the game.
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, what else can Drea and Marianne do other than just say what they needed to say and then do what they needed to do in this episode?
Yeah. I will say I think that this was a much needed wake up call for Drea and her game plan and her gameplay. And I'm sad that it took Roxroy leaving, which that necessarily wasn't her fault. The tribes were split. But I'm glad that it took that for her to see that she's been playing fucking stupid. Because this whole 8-person alliance, this not going to work for her. She's going to inherently be at the bottom. So I hope that this is a wake-up call for her to play a little bit more strategically. And she has all of the tools that she needs to win this game. So really now it just boils down to her making the right moves at the right time. And Marianne, I don't know about her. But anyways.
Yeah, Andrea has all the right powers to go further.
Well, that's what I meant, yeah. I mean, she literally has 3 fucking advantages.
Although I think Marianne's in a better position than Drea, personally. Because Marianne does have that first tribal alliance to fall back on. And she has a closer relationship with Omar, who's actually running the game. Alright, well, that is our hot topic with Q for tonight on Survivor 42. Thank you for joining me.